All right, we are live. So, hey, everybody, welcome back to the channel today. Obviously, this is a live stream. This is not one of our regular videos, but hey, there happens to be an awesome event happening this weekend. It's the Route 66 Range Expo. Not just the opportunity to get FaceTime with vendors, not just the opportunity to see some cool products and to engage as a firearms community, but also an opportunity to benefit you, the gun owners, because at the end of all of this, just as Route 66 has continued to do year after year, the proceeds from the event go back into the fight, fighting in the courts and fighting against the supermajority legislature that we have in this state. So what better way to thank them than by going live here this weekend. We will be live streaming today. We will be live streaming tomorrow to meet some new faces of people we don't always get FaceTime with, which today happens to be Reno May. So Reno May is with us today. Reno, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, man. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. So, I mean, a lot of people watching this video probably won't need you to do an introduction, but if I could introduce yourself, and I'm really curious, you know, what is your story? You've gained some prominence on YouTube within the firearms community. I happen to know that a lot of law enforcement watches your videos, but you've got a lot of subscribers in general. What is your story? You know, did that start in California? What was your upbringing, and how'd you get into this community?
Yeah, so I initially, so my name is Reno May. I'm a YouTuber part-time in the state of California. I talk a lot about gun laws, gun stuff that we can't do, ways to stay safe with that kind of thing because it's ever-changing, and if you don't pay attention for 6 months, things might be different than it was last month. Yeah. So I initially got into firearms in high school with my friend Daniel. We were playing a lot of Call of Duty at the time, and he said, hey, you know, do you want to come out to my property and shoot a real AR this weekend? And I was like, yes, please, let's do it. And that was how I got my initial taste into firearms and really enjoyed it. I later on in college purchased my own firearms for myself, and eventually I started working in a gun store, and that was really where things that became my main hobby. That's where things got out of control and the obsession started. I was working there for a little while, and I had a lot of great employees that supported me and taught me a ton of stuff, taught me about the laws of what we can do, what we can't do. And back in 2016, I think it was coined as a Gunmageddon, one of them, because it seems like every few years there's another one. That was when the bullet buttons went away. And I was working in the shop, and every 20 minutes or so, someone would give us a call and say, hey, I have an AR-15 with a bullet button. What do I do? When do I have to do it? What are my options? And trying to have that conversation on the phone, on the fly, while I'm doing someone's 4473 in DROS was getting really difficult. So I looked at my coworker and I said, CJ, tomorrow I'm bringing my camera in. We're going to give the best explanation of what the options are for people. And so when someone calls, we can say, hey, go check out our channel. We got a breakdown of what you can do. If you have more questions, come on in and we'll show you some stuff in person. So we started making more videos, and we started branching out into doing little firearms displays of stuff that we were trying to sell that we thought was neat. And then in 2018, that gun store closed, and I still had access to the channel because it was just all my channel at the time. And that's when some stuff with how to purchase a firearm, there was some changes with the 18 to 21, I believe was something that happened then. And a lot of people were commenting on those old videos saying, hey, like now that things have changed, what can I do? What can I do? So I was like, all right, you know, I still own my camera. I still got all my stuff. Like, I'll make another video. Sure. And then I'll just walk away from it. You know, I thought that would be it. So I made that video. A ton of people said, oh, like, you know, what happened to the gun store? Like, you should keep making videos. So a couple weeks went by and I said, you know, I'll make another one. And then a week went by and I said, I'll make another video. And eventually it just sort of spiraled out of control. And in 2020, my goal in 2020 was to hit 10,000 subscribers. I started the year with about 2,000, and I said, if I can hit 10K this year, that would be awesome. Well, the shutdowns happened, and I looked at my YouTube analytics on my How to Buy a Gun in California video, and that week that it was announced, the views skyrocketed, and that's when we saw a lot of people get into guns, and that's kind of where everything for me changed.
It's kind of it's kind of curious whether or not you think it's coincidental that these things seem to happen about every 4 years. I remember Gunmageddon was crazy, and the more you look into politics, the more you realize that people are continuing to lobby for office. But when it comes down to the community, holy smokes, man, it was chaos. I remember as a CRPA employee, going from shop to shop trying to get petitions signed.
We had a big table.
There was just chaos everywhere, not just leading up to it, but after the vote. And then the backside chaos starts of, okay, what exactly was just now implemented, which of course we then work to fight in the courts a little bit after. And I guess that sort of leads into another question that I had for you when it comes to content on YouTube. It sort of sounds like you had an intent for the kind of content that you created, and it's very informative. I would say that your videos still have that element to them today, and you can appreciate it from any end, right? Whether it's on legislation or a cool new feature, or whether or not something is legal in the state of California. Is that kind of the progress that you expect to have? I know that you said you kind of just one day decided to start doing it, but was that the goal from the beginning that's carrying you through today?
Yeah, we kind of looked at it like this. California, there's a lot of gun owners that live here. But, if you don't have someone in your life that is knowledgeable or can show you the ropes, if you look at the DOJ's website to try to determine what you can't do, it's not very helpful. And there's been periods of time where they've had outdated information where if you followed that, you could have potentially been breaking the law based on what their website is saying. So my big goal initially was, we wanted to educate people. We wanted to answer the questions so people would know what they were doing. And over time, it kind of evolved into that being more and more important to me, because the amount of people rolling in the comments saying, I was looking to get my first gun, or I wanted to get a CCW, but I was nervous. Sometimes the gun store employees aren't very helpful, or they don't want to help you with the information that you need. And because they were able to get some background knowledge, they were able to more comfortably make that first step. So for me, every time I get one of those comments, I'm like, yes, that's exactly that's what I want, And so, it was always the goal to be informative and to kind of show people what you can do and what your options are, so they can make the best choices for themselves. But it became more and more important to me and more personally satisfying when people were able to take that.
Personally satisfying enough to now, for example, this weekend, and I know you've done this event in years past, but no cameras rolling out on that stage, and you're still informing people, trying to help them in that way. I'm curious what your relationship with Route 66 is. As far as the communication that I've had, it's been very centered on propping up the firearms community. What's your relationship been like with them coming through the years? Because I know that you've come to this event several years in a row now.
Yeah, so back in 2020, someone that was really close with the range, Yogi, he slid into my Instagram DMs and was kind of joking, like, "Hey, I'm not trying to take advantage of you. I'm not creepy, I swear," which is kind of sometimes the creepiest thing you can say to someone, right? But he said, "Hey, this range just opened up. I think they first started right around the lockdowns, and that was a tough time to try to start a business. And he said, we'd love to host you for a meet and greet event. They'll do all the work for planning it. They just want you to come out." And I said, that sounds awesome. I think that would be a cool way to get people out, shoot, get to meet a lot of subscribers. And so that started in 2020. And then we did it again with Anthony the next year, and then it turned into the Range Expo, this event, and this range has gotten so much bigger over time, and it's become this whole beast of its own. And it's just been cool to see the amount of people that we draw in here that get an opportunity to shoot some stuff they wouldn't otherwise, get an opportunity to connect and meet with people. There's people that are in my Discord that met here for the first time, so a lot of people have an opportunity and a reason to come together and meet up. And it really is cool to come out here and see that we can draw a crowd to an event like this in the thousands, where people just want to come and see that the firearms ownership community is a lot bigger than you might think in California.
No kidding. And I've already had the privilege of talking to some people. You've got people from Fresno here. You've got people from San Diego here. It is not just San Bernardino. People are coming from all over the state for this. So it's definitely good to see. And as you continue to inform these people, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I personally didn't have a whole lot of firearms experience as a child growing up. You kind of made it seem like it was something that came into your life as opposed to something that was always there. But especially working at a gun store, you find out pretty quickly the connection between the litigation and the legislation and the firearms themselves. There are definitely communities within communities when it comes to the gun owning community, and then the firearms advocacy community. And honestly, one of my goals is to try and link those two. And I'm sure that's part of yours as well, because it's important to know that even if you're not necessarily advocating all the time, you have this thing that you get a sense of security from being able to protect yourself. You don't want it to get taken away. How quickly did that link come together for you, just as far as having this thing that was fun to shoot to understanding all of the litigation and legislation behind it that needs advocacy?
I'd say it was pretty quick. For me personally, when I first realized that I had to put a bullet button on my AR, I was like, man, I don't like that. I wish there was a way that we could make this normal. And then you kind of realize, like, okay, well, they said we couldn't have this. What's to stop them from saying we can't then have this, or then can't do this, or then can't carry our gun anywhere in public? So for me, that slippery slope of going from firearms owner to firearms advocate was quite slippery. And I think a lot of people, reaching out and touching that group of general firearms owners and bringing them into the Second Amendment advocacy side is huge. And I think that's so important, because the amount of people with hunting licenses that don't vote every year, not even that they're voting one way or the other, just don't vote at all. And if we can get them to come out and support what it is that they want to continue to enjoy for recreational or for, providing for their family purposes or protecting their family. I think for me, a big moment for me was I lived in Sonoma County during the 2017 fires, and my wife and I got a phone call at 3:30 a.m. saying, hey, North Santa Rosa's on fire. You guys should probably just pack up your stuff and maybe head to a friend's house down south. And so we start packing up all our stuff, and we lived in South Santa Rosa at the time, and we're driving down the road, and I see a photographer on the right in the middle of the night, pitch black, taking photos off to the hill on the left. I'm like, what is this guy taking a photo of? And I look over, and the entire hillside is on fire. The fire is cresting over the hill. And so the first day, gun store was closed. We just said, hey, everyone, figure out your stuff. Second day, we're in a group chat with the manager and the owner, saying, I was like, hey, I got nothing to do. Should we open the shop? Enough of us have the ability to get in. And so we opened the shop, and the amount of people for the first time coming into the shop saying, hey, we had people peeking into our windows on our property, or just peeking into our windows in our neighborhood, scouting our house out, and we don't feel safe. And we called the police, and they said they're going to be 45 minutes at minimum till they can find an officer that's free, and then they might not be able to even make it there for a couple hours. And a lot of people were coming in saying, I really need something to protect myself with. And I said, I hope that you can make the next 10 days okay.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, it's unfortunate that realizing that your personal protection is at the whims of a government agency, it's not fun to have to realize that in the moment.
Yeah, and then how much did that become even more apparent during the 2020 lockdowns?
Yep.
I remember receiving phone call after phone call from the businesses saying, hey, how are we not essential here. You know, we've got so many people. I mean, from my perspective, it was firearms and toilet paper.
Yeah.
Like those were the two things that people were trying to get. And we did do a fair amount of fighting to ensure that the gun stores were deemed essential businesses, but not just that, from the customers themselves. I can't tell you how many phone calls I got or conversations that I had, which is like, what do you mean a 10-day waiting period?
And then they say, well, can I pay you more and get it now?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you have all of these politicians year after year talking about closing this mythical gun show loophole and imposing all of these things that are getting, and these politicians are getting votes from people who don't actually know how these processes work, which I think is another goal, just in educating not just the firearms community, but the non-firearms community, so that they understand, hey, in your moment of need, when maybe you're looking to find something to protect yourself this way, you're not going to be stuck for 10 days without being able to do anything.
Yeah. I had countless times over the years when I was working in the gun store of single mother with a kid whose husband was abusive. She left him, you know, he's got a restraining order, and telling her, like, I'm so sorry that, like, you're going through that, and I'm also so sorry that you can't get this gun for 10 days, and, like, even if you've got these threats. And people that are opposed to firearms or pro-firearms legislation will say, well, what's wrong with the 10-day waiting period? Like, I don't see why they look at it from the lens of themselves, like, well, I don't need a gun. Like, what do you need a gun? Just wait the 10 days. What's the big deal? And I'm like, okay, I'm glad that you live in a situation where you are not immediately at risk. Not everyone is so fortunate. Not everyone has that benefit. You're thinking of this very selfishly, and ultimately your solution is a proven non-solution. It doesn't fix the problem.
Yeah, and it's just, you don't need it until you need it.
Yeah, and when you need it.
And unfortunately, it's tough to look at something like that when you're thinking about how you don't necessarily need something. So, I mean, I guess the logic is understandable, but the conclusion, and again, working in the place that I have worked, and I'm sure you too, like you're explaining, and you hear so many of these stories, it becomes a pretty obvious decision. But let's talk about that fight. Along with the legislation is also the litigation. When it comes to advocacy, you're doing it there too. We've talked about it plenty on this channel. Again, probably something that doesn't need any introduction, but the lawsuit May v. Bonta, Reno May. Yeah. So if you can, like I said, we've done this a little bit, but can you explain what this lawsuit is and what drove you to advocate by becoming a plaintiff in it?
Yeah, I've always been really supportive of all the work that the CRPA and other organizations are doing, because it affects me personally, or I know it affects other people personally, and it's not always just about how it affects me, it's how it affects people in society as a whole. So when the CRPA said that they needed plaintiffs for these lawsuits, I was absolutely willing and chomping at the bit to be a part of it, because it's something that means so much to me. Being able to carry a gun outside of your home and protect yourself if need be is one of the cores of the Second Amendment. It's being able to have your own means of protection. And SB 2, man, what a stinker of a law. What an absolute stinker, man. My favorite part about listening to Portantino talk about SB 2 in the press conference was he was asked by a reporter, because SB 2's laws were so widespread of what would be a prohibited space, he was asked, where will people be able to legally carry a gun? And he said sidewalks. And I almost blew a gasket, because most sidewalks in a practical sense would have still been a prohibited space. I tried to do a video of me demonstrating how it would work, but I very quickly gave up, because I realized, I looked at a map and I was like, man, on this block there is a dentist office, or on that block there's a place that serves intoxicating liquor for consumption on premises, so a restaurant. If there's any first aid facility, if there's any government building, you look at a building, it's just a general office space looking building, 20 stories. One of those could be a government agency that you've never even heard of.
Right.
So it would have made it completely impossible to carry a firearm anywhere other than driving, and then you maybe could step out of your car sometimes. So that's huge. Not being able to protect yourself outside of the home that's a non-negotiable, for me.
Yeah, and something that we continue to see clarified at places like the Supreme Court. It's kind of interesting, and I'm sure it will continue to be interesting so long as we have the makeup of politicians that we have in this state, how openly defiant to these decisions from the Supreme Court that we continue to see. Another one of those that I was just curious to get your take on. I know that you were passionate enough to offer a challenge to the community on X, matching donations up to $1,000 for that legal fight to CRPA. Obviously, thank you very much. And I can tell you from the back end, they hit that goal pretty quick.
I was thinking it would take a couple days. I think it maybe took a couple hours.
Yeah, it definitely happened quick. But back on the advocacy, what continues to drive you to do stuff like this? This is kind of a mixed bag with taxation and the Second Amendment. What's your outlook for some of these new laws like that 11% tax?
Oh man, that one's a tough one. I think it's such a huge impact on the community because you've got the built-in Robert Pittman. That's the right name, right? Robertson Pittman. That any firearm has automatically got some built-in taxes on the back end that you don't see. Then you got sales tax. Then you got an 11% tax on top of that. If you purchase a $1,000 firearm, you're paying another $200 in taxes. And I truly hope that one goes away soon, because the amount of people that I know that are not purchasing firearms that they would otherwise find useful for various purposes or just for enjoyment, I know people are saying that they are not making those purchases now, which I know hurts the gun stores, which gun stores are already being burdened by the increased cost of operating just in general, in addition to the 24/7, 365 audio and video surveillance. I know that closed a lot of gun stores. So with the amount of people that are making fewer purchases and in smaller amounts, I know that's going to hurt the gun stores, which is going to hurt accessibility to people being able to get firearms. And I think the crucial thing is we look at this, the way that the anti-gun politicians or the people proposing this legislation are wording most of their rhetoric is they want more training. They want people to have more rigorous training so that they are safer in theory. What they want is it to be more expensive, to price people out.
Right.
But now people are purchasing ammo less and shooting less. So the end result of their legislation is going to be people not being as proficient with their firearms. So I'm really hopeful. I think that a lot of these court cases that have won over the years are really being built on. I think when the Bruin decision came down, that was beautiful because we saw the floodgates open for what was possible to be challenged now. Because getting rid of interest balancing, I'm sure the states are still trying to do it. They're still trying to make those arguments in court, but it's not nearly as successful. And I'm very positive. I think there's never been a more positive outlook in my mind for what is possible to win. So.
Well, speaking of outlooks, we do have an election coming up here in about a week and a half.
Yep.
When it comes to the firearms community in California, when you're looking at something like the presidential nomination or some of these elections that are happening in California, what is your overall outlook as these elections come and go?
California, I think historically has voted pretty much 66 to 70% the way that's not beneficial for firearms. But, if we can get a few things like just a few flipped seats, that's all it could take to get rid of a supermajority that would be able to pass anything in this state. And I think we've really never been closer to that because people are significantly less enthused with the options that they're being presented on the left or liberal side of the argument. And I think we've got a very good chance of getting rid of that supermajority, which is what postponed SB2 the first time around.
Yeah, I remember that.
So, if we can get something that would at the very least show these politicians that we aren't enthused about you for these reasons, and I think guns are slowly becoming more and more popular within groups that haven't traditionally been interested in firearms, and now they're being impacted by these laws that they have voted in favor of for years.
So it kind of sounds like you're feeling the same thing that I'm feeling, which there is seemingly a little bit of a change in the tide. These things don't happen quickly.
No.
I mean, California used to be a red state.
Yep.
Now it's a blue state, but it didn't happen overnight. We're obviously going to continue working to make sure that people are educated on the Second Amendment, the Second Amendment rights that they are afforded, and potentially shift that back into a pro-Second Amendment state. I guess as far as advocating is concerned, you're a prime example. What would you say to people who are getting into firearms maybe for the first time, maybe aren't even into firearms? What would you say to them on the importance of advocating for Second Amendment rights?
It's you're going to have the biggest impact in your local communities and your friend groups. Each of us individually will probably not have a huge impact on a national scale. But you can have a huge impact on your local community and your friend groups, and being able to educate people. I remember in college, a friend of mine came over who is very left-leaning. He's become much more interested in firearms as, obviously we're very close, and as I've educated him more. But he came into my garage and I had an AR-15 pistol, and I was explaining to him how this was a pistol legally and what that meant, and showing him, here's what the laws actually are. Here's what the things are actually preventing. Here's what is actually legal, not legal. Here's why these things don't make sense. And I've been able to get a lot of people more on board with that thinking. And it doesn't come from Facebook fights with your aunt on Facebook. Those are not going to be very beneficial. But inviting your friend out to the range and showing them how fun firearms are can be a great first hook to getting them interested and moving more in a direction of being pro-gun.
Yeah, absolutely. And those local decisions, and I've seen it. We've got the CRPA chapter program, which you're involved in as well.
Yeah.
But I've seen wonderful things come out of those local areas, and something that I continue to try to impress on people is, not everybody is Donald Trump. Most of these politicians start at a local level. Believe me, they all have aspirations of getting up there. But if you vet them at a local level, you ensure that the right people get in at the lower levels of government, you're going to ensure that the right team ascends to the state government. So local advocacy is extremely important, which is why we have initiatives within that chapter program to make sure that we're vetting as many people as we can, with the voter guide as well.
Yeah,
but
that's been huge. Just having our local org, our local chapter post various town council members who are voting, like what they've said when asked about firearms. That's been huge, because a lot of times the city council or your local town council, they might not have on their website what their policies are on firearms. It might not really be something that is particularly something that they would even have the authority to move on in some cases. But we're seeing in Sacramento now a push for more gun safety legislation. And having your local orgs being able to vet them soon, because I think Rick Travis was saying there's like a 6 to 8 year pipeline from them being some local water controller or local town council to being state representative level, which is where it's hugely impactful for us. So you get the right people in when they're at this little, small, not very powerful position, but likely more impactful for you personally on a personal level. You get the right people in there, you maybe stop the next Portantino from signing a bill like SB2. Yeah,
absolutely. And it can happen within that span very easily, just from one thing to the next, whether it's water board to county supervisor to state representative. So it's definitely important to have initiatives like that. I guess I'll close this out with one simple question. What's the next couple of months look like for you? just as far as outlook is concerned for the state?
Yeah, I think my outlook on a lot of these court cases, I know we have the Rody v. Bonta arguments coming up soon, which I'm really looking forward to. The ammunition background check system has been a disaster and a fiasco from the start to finish, So hopefully we can get some good movement on that. I'm really happy with the small little wins that we've been able to get along the way with all these various lawsuits. I'm really looking forward to seeing if the Supreme Court picks up those other states' assault weapon ban, and I believe a magazine ban is being looked at by them, and then maybe the Duncan case,
perhaps
the California's magazine ban. Hopefully we get some of that movement going soon. Like everything, I'm not holding my breath, but I'm very optimistic of things going forward. And, on a personal level, just holidays are coming up, enjoying the time with my friends and family.
Heck yeah, and I'm kind of in the same boat as you. It's easy to be optimistic when you feel like you have the right and the winning argument.
Yeah.
It does get frustrating sometimes because the way that the courts work, things move slowly. But I think optimism is definitely warranted there, and I think that there's a lot of optimism also because of people like you who have influence, who have a large following, who are just aimed at informing people the way that you are. So I want to thank you very much for doing what you're doing.
Thank you,
and thanks for taking the time with us today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This was really awesome.
Awesome. Well, guys, that's Reno May. Again, thank you very much. And again, we are here at the Route 66 Range Expo event. Going to look forward to having somebody from CCW Safe come on here shortly. But before we do that, go ahead and watch this quick promo for the event.
We are in troubled times.
We're not stopping here.
Landmark gun laws. Public.
It's getting worse.
Where sometimes it is hard to define what is right and wrong.
I look forward to signing each and every one of those common sense gun bills.
I'm prepared to go back to muskets.
Do you have no common decency?
During these times, we search for what is steadfast, what is lasting, and what we know. The Second Amendment is lasting. The Founding Fathers said, "The right of self-defense never ceases. It is among the most sacred and alike necessary to nations and individuals." CRPA follows those same values and has been doing so for over 147 years. There are many fly-by-night groups that promise success and say they stand for foundational values, but look deeper and you find they are not as steadfast as one would think. In a world where it's necessary to protect yourself and your loved ones, CRPA stands with you in that. We will not concede, and we will hold the line to defend the second. Now, like really no other time that we have experienced in our lifetimes, it is important to defend those values and not allow others to water down our voice. Now is the time to join CRPA and be part of something real.
All right, guys, we are back here once again. If you are just joining us, we are here at the Route 66 Range Expo event. It's going to be happening today and tomorrow. And by the way, guys, the event just opened up. So if you're in the area, we're going to be live streaming here for just a little while longer. If you want to keep us in your pocket as you're coming down to the range, we're here in San Bernardino County. But as we've already discussed, people are coming from all over the state for this. It's a huge event. It goes to benefit the firearms community, as the proceeds from this event end up going towards Second Amendment litigation with organizations just like CRPA, which is why we're here. We thought it was important to not put out the normal videos that we do this week and be here as they are trying to benefit the community that way. We have with us now Gary Eastridge from CCW Safe. We've talked about this on the channel before. CCW Safe is a sponsor of this channel. Obviously, it's important for people who do carry a firearm and have a CCW in the state to have coverage. Gary, thank you for being on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I am sort of curious, what is the background? What is the story? Because obviously there are other organizations out there that are in the same realm, but what is CCW Safe's story?
CCW Safe, I think, has one of the more compelling backstories of any other company in the industry. Our CEO and founder, Mike Darter, was an Oklahoma City police officer. All of the three founders are former law enforcement and are familiar with coverage type companies or associations. There in Oklahoma City, where I retired, where Mike was an officer, we had the Fraternal Order of Police that provided our representation. Mike was a very active gang officer and was involved in a double fatality police shooting in about 1997. I was the homicide investigator that interviewed Mike. 20 years later, it resulted in me having a job. But through Mike's experience, he was cleared criminally very quick. A lot of people don't realize that's just the first hurdle. Then came the second fight, which was the civil realm. Family members of the deceased filed a lawsuit. The FOP ultimately paid about $150,000 in defense costs, and Mike received a summary judgment. Basically, the case went away. So when Mike went into the private sector, he knew that because of all the friends he had made in the gang unit, he was going to need some kind of coverage. So he reached out to the companies that were available at that time. Didn't see anything he really liked and didn't understand the coverage issues. Being cops, we don't know much about insurance or the different coverage options. So he reached out to his stepbrother, who is a former officer and an attorney who dealt with insurance on a regular basis. He practiced mainly medical malpractice defense. He researched them and said, "Hey, we can put together a better offering than what's available." And about 2011, they formed CCW Safe.
And you've been operating ever since. I mean, obviously, you're in the state of California.
Yes.
Where else is this being offered?
We offer coverage in 48 states. Washington State and New Jersey have been a problem for this kind of industry. New York, we limit our coverage only to law enforcement. Same, I'm sure anybody that's familiar with Second Amendment issues is aware of some of the actions New York has taken. And at that point, it was so difficult to get a permit in New York. Law enforcement was our primary customer base anyway, so we stayed with that.
Well, obviously at CRPA we are huge proponents of CCWs in general.
Yes.
I guess, it's not necessarily known. You get a car, you got your license, you need auto insurance.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that is pretty known. coverage this way isn't necessarily, I would say, as prominently known or understood. I'm really curious, especially because you have a law enforcement background. Can you walk us through the process? I guess ultimately what this would highlight is why you need coverage as a CCW holder. But can you walk us through the process? Because, looking at psychologically, men tend to have the superhero complex. I would say generally, especially men with families, and I could definitely say this for myself too, they definitely have the thought process in their head of protecting.
Absolutely.
And if you have a firearm, that's going to be included in that protecting. But what people don't always understand, which kind of goes to what I just said about it not necessarily being as prominently known to need coverage for something like this, is the ramifications afterward, even if you're doing the right thing. Can you walk us through, with the law enforcement background, what would happen if you were to shoot someone in self-defense? What the process is like for that person who's just protecting their family?
Yeah, the process can vary considerably around the country. And in addition to that, the scrutiny a self-defense case receives varies greatly from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. We had a incident in Los Angeles a little over a year ago. The politics of downtown LA are much different than they are in Oklahoma City or Kansas or Texas or anything like that. What most people don't understand is that officer that is talking to you post-incident, if he were involved in that exact same incident, he would have representation before he sat down and did an interview. So you have that initial first response. So you're going to have a police officer asking you questions. You're probably going to have experienced greater stress than you ever have in your life, unless you're a combat veteran or in some kind of line of work that exposes you to those kind of threats. It's going to be beyond anything you can comprehend. So you've got that first response, and you tell them a story. Your first story is probably going to be to dispatch, to 911. And then you're going to have that second story to the first responder. Then anytime there's a use of force, keep in mind that self-defense is a legal exception to what would otherwise be a crime. I can't punch you unless I'm acting in self-defense. Right. I can't use physical force against you. So now there is a criminal investigation ongoing. An investigator is going to be assigned to interview you, to collect evidence, and even though in your mind, you may feel like your actions were 100% justified, there's a multi-tiered process that's going to occur to determine, did you act reasonably and did you act legally? We don't recommend doing an initial interview without representation. Just like when I was in law enforcement, I had the benefit of the FOP sending a rep. If needed, they sent an attorney. And we didn't do an interview until I had time to talk to my rep, talk to my attorney, and then we went in there prepared. What we have seen in incidents, the Steve Maddox case is well known. It was the first case where a company in this industry provided coverage. We spent $400,000 on that case, walking him through the process. The problem was he, like a lot of good citizens, and most people that get a carry permit, most people that legally carry are law-abiding citizens. So he, thinking he was helping, tried to answer all law enforcement questions. Because of the stress of the event, things got twisted and turned, and the next thing you know, he's charged with first-degree murder. and he even, I just talked to him a couple weeks ago. He was telling me then how even when they booked him, he thought, well, they'll finish their investigation and they'll find I acted in self-defense, and they'll let me go. But sadly, that wasn't the case.
Well, is that so? I mean, there are people who do things for the right reasons, and there are also people who do things for the wrong reasons, which I'm sure is why law enforcement would have a set of procedures that they need to go through, regardless of the situation. But what's the discrepancy there? I mean, basically, what you just said was a change in story, which logically to me seems pretty understandable. You have a high stress situation. You've got a lot of adrenaline pumping. You may be not remembering every single thing that was in front of your face because you have the honed in vision there. So what is it like experiencing that with something like coverage versus not coverage?
What you got to understand is everybody's familiar with evidence.
Sure.
But what is evidence? Evidence is something that you have to interpret, and depending on your perspective, you may interpret it different than I would interpret it. In his case, there was a lot of ways the case. It wasn't just some misstatements by him, and none of his statements were really incriminating. But there was some misinterpretation of evidence that, and this really drives home, I believe, the point of coverage. If Stephen was on his own and he hadn't been a member, first thing he's got to do is he's got to find a bondsman. His bond was denied initially. He was going to be held until the trial. Trial process is normally 2 years. Of course, you're going to lose your job in that 2 years. You're going to lose unless you're self-sufficient, you're going to lose your ability to mount a defense. We petitioned the court for a bond hearing, got bond set at $500,000, got him out of jail for $37,500 is what we paid to the bondsman to get him out of jail, and that was with a reduced premium. And then had attorneys in to see him on the Sunday afternoon when he was arrested about midnight Saturday night. So if you don't have coverage, where do you start?
Especially if you're not educated on this process. Yeah, where do you start?
And I'm educated on the process. I've been a part of the process. But if I'm out here in Riverside County or whatever county we're in right here, I don't know what the process is here. Right. Some states, we took a check. I was in Illinois about a year ago on a lethal shooting. There, they don't have bondsmen. You've got to put up 10% of the total bond with the court clerk. Well, I don't have $100,000 sitting in my savings account that I can run, and we literally flew a cashier's check with an attorney from Oklahoma City to St. Louis. I picked them up, drove them to the courthouse so they could post the bond, and then took him back to the airport. If you don't know how that system works, you're kind of lost. On top of the fact that you've got to now hire an attorney, that $100,000 just gets him out of jail.
Right.
On a murder charge, a retainer is easily going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and then you start dealing with the actual court, and something that you can become familiar with pretty quick when you're looking at things like lawsuits. You know, if arguments aren't made the right way, if things aren't filed correctly, these can be the huge differences in either fines that you'll pay or jail time that you'll spend. I'm also kind of curious, and I'm sure to a certain extent you keep statistics, but something that we talk about on this channel a lot, I guess I would just categorize as the intrinsic value of firearms and being able to carry a firearm. I know that we've had some of these government agencies who have spent a lot of hard work and time trying to get rid of the CDC statistics of defensive handgun uses, which I think is a direct link or direct evidence to the intrinsic value of firearms. You know, we're looking at 30,000 firearms deaths in the country every single year. More than half of those, are suicides, which means that less than half of those is somebody actually shooting somebody else. Then you start taking in account the criminal element, which is an even smaller subset, and the accidents and stuff like that. What value, when it comes to the company, do you guys have in CCWs in general? And you're also you're telling me that everywhere is different. What is the work that goes into making sure you can operate in all of those different states? What kind of labor and effort does it take to actually become an expert in all those different areas?
Yeah. The core issue of self-defense is really pretty consistent nationwide. It's all the other factors that can play into an incident. We're all familiar with incidents that have occurred around the country that, because of either political occurrences that were happening or some high-profile aspect of the case, has dramatically impacted whether a charge is filed or not filed. You touched on statistics. Statistics are only as good as the data that's being inputted, and as we've seen recently with national events, with the reporting of violent crimes, there's now some admissions that, hey, we didn't do the best job of handling that. The other thing is, if I produce my firearm in a self-defense situation, and that situation dissipates, it doesn't go into a statistic anywhere. Right. If I call and make a police report and say, hey, this guy just tried to rob me, it'll go down as an attempted robbery. It doesn't go down as an attempted robbery thwarted by a law-abiding citizen carrying a legally possessed firearm. As far as nationwide, one of the reasons we structured the way we did, we hired Don West. Don West is our national trial counsel and is one of my favorite people. I love setting and talking homicide cases because of my background and his experiences. But he is the one that vets attorneys for us. So he's the one that has to reach out in California, if we have an incident in California, and find somebody that is good, qualified in the jurisdiction that the incident, and we personally believe it should be an attorney from the jurisdiction of occurrence, an attorney that has a relationship with that courthouse, a relationship with the DA, a relationship with the judges, and so on.
Right. So you're specifically looking, as you're experts in this specific field, you're also looking for experts in the jurisdictions.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any examples or instances where that's paid off enormously versus instances where it hasn't?
Yeah, we had a case in Los Angeles. I want to say it was August of 22. I don't remember exactly. I've been on several. In that case, our member did exactly what we advise members to do, and that is pledge cooperation. Tell the officer, I want to cooperate. I want to tell you what happened, but I want to do it with my legal representation present. So he was booked. We were notified by I think a friend. We posted bond, got him out of jail. In the meantime, I load up, me and another guy from the critical response team, and we fly to LA. Having Don West, understanding that you've got a lag time between investigation and indictment or criminal charges, he hired a local counsel. He actually traveled to Los Angeles. They sat down with the local counsel. The local counsel knew the prosecutor who was assigned the case and hadn't made a decision yet, he reached out and said, hold on for just a minute, give me a little bit of time, we're going to give you a proffer. A lot of people don't know what a proffer is, but it's basically a king, I call it a king's X. It's where you say, I'm talking to you unofficially, but if I were to do an interview, here's what I would tell you. And then it's not actionable if an agreement can't be reached. It can't be anything in that proffer can't be used against you. In this case, we provided a proffer. It happened at a convenience store. During my scene assessment, I had noted that there was at least a half dozen security cameras that should have, if they were operational, captured the incident. We said, here's what our member will say if he were interviewed. We know that there's multiple camera views. We ask that you review all of those views and compare it to what our members had happened. And in one of the more gun unfriendly jurisdictions in the country, we ended up with a no file and saved him probably 2 years waiting to be put through that process.
Right.
And that's a big one that most people don't understand. When that ball starts rolling, it will roll over you in a hurry if you don't get in front of it.
Yeah, it seems like it's just sort of night and day, which I guess, we encounter these things in other areas of our lives all the time. So you guys, if you can think of something that you've never done before, and then you continue to do that thing over and over and over again, you get a lot more efficient at it, you get a lot better at it. This is bringing somebody in who knows the routes that need to be taken in order to get you your best result. I guess we can close on this. We've seen, especially since the Bruin decision came out from the Supreme Court, we have seen a huge influx of people wanting CCWs in the state of California. We at CRPA, along with our attorneys, have worked very hard to make sure that the sheriff's departments throughout the state have the resources that they need. They're complying with the Bruin decision. This is bringing a lot more CCWs into the state. What do you say to those people who are getting their CCW for the first time and don't really know what coverage might do for them? What would your message be to them on the necessity of getting coverage?
Well, you pointed out the analogy of a car and car insurance. That's required by law in most jurisdictions, if not all jurisdictions. What I would encourage people to do is research self-defense incidents around the country. And look how many times a law-abiding citizen felt like they were operating within the law to only end up facing charges. Steve Maddox, our case in North Carolina, the only option of punishment that jury had was life in prison without the possibility of parole, which means when he went into that prison, he would die in that prison. And this is a young man, he was 42 at the time. He said he hadn't been in a fight since high school, and his only interaction with law enforcement was a speeding ticket. And at 42, he does what he thinks is right, and the next thing you know, even in the investigative process, when he thought everything would be found out, it ended up with him going to a full 2-week jury trial. 2 years of his life, 2 years of his family going through that. Even when we got him out on bond, he had to wear an ankle monitor. So the only thing, the big thing I would tell to anybody carrying a firearm for self-defense or acting in self-defense with other means, we cover other than firearms with CCW Safe, is if there's an injury, there's going to be an action. There's either going to be a criminal or a civil action. And the more serious that injury is, the more serious the action and the consequences of not having proper representation. So the thing I always like to say is our basic membership plan, the protector which is discounted for first responders and military, or Defender for everybody else, costs me less than my Netflix accounts cost.
Right.
If it's worth entertaining you on Friday night for a couple hours watching a movie for $15 to $20 a month, think about what it could save you. Steve Maddox's case, $430,000, I think, was the total.
Wow. Well, yeah, I guess if you break that down logically, you know, the reason why people carry a firearm is to be able to save their life if they need to. This is kind of the same thing. You're saving yourself from your life legally.
Yeah.
And you certainly do need to. There's no question about it. These procedures will happen if you're involved in something where, like you said, there's injury. Well, Gary, I really appreciate you coming on and educating us on this topic. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's a wonderful facility, and we love working with CRPA.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much again. And guys, we are going to continue this a little bit. That was Gary with CCW Safe, who again is a sponsor of this channel. We appreciate that very much. While we were talking, guys, we got our first super chat that CRPA TV has ever seen. Another YouTuber putting his money into the fight, putting his money where his mouth is. Copper Jacket TV, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate you, and believe me, we're rooting for you as well in that. So we're going to hit another promo here really quick, guys, give you another view of what this event is looking like, and then we're going to come back really quick and talk about these lawsuits, talk about the reason that the community is benefiting from events like this Route 66 Range Expo. We'll be right back with you.
We are in troubled times.
We're not stopping
Or
here.
landmark gun laws.
Public.
I'm always concerned about
Join us online.
It's getting worse.
Where sometimes it is hard to define what is right and wrong.
I look forward to signing each and every one of those common sense gun bills.
I'm prepared to go back to muskets.
Do you have no common decency?
During these times, we search for what is steadfast, what is lasting, and what we know. The Second Amendment is lasting. The Founding Fathers said, "The right of self-defense never ceases. It is among the most sacred and alike necessary to nations and individuals." CRPA follows those same values and has been doing so for over 147 years. There are many fly-by-night groups that promise success and say they stand for foundational values, but look deeper and you find they are not as steadfast as one would think. In a world where it's necessary to protect yourself and your loved ones, CRPA stands with you in that. We will not concede, and we will hold the line to defend the second. Now, like really no other time that we have experienced in our lifetimes, it is important to defend those values and not allow others to water down our voice. Now is the time to join CRPA and be part of something.
All right, guys. So we've got a couple of guests that we've been able to talk with today. It was really good to hear from CCW Safe. It was also really good to hear from Reno May and the perspective that he has on this community. And guys, the advocacy that he has done, that a lot of people are doing, really injecting some energy into this fight is just what we need. We're extremely we're extremely thankful for the work that they're doing, especially here at Route 66 as well. Guys, these people are doing the exact same thing. They host this event here. The proceeds go to the fight for our Second Amendment rights. So before we cut out here, I just kind of wanted to go over what some of these reasons are, because there is a lot of Second Amendment litigation that is happening right now. Normally we cover one lawsuit per video and we try to dive into it, but when we're looking at this fight overall, just these CRPA lawsuits is what we've got on our plate, and there are several more going through the court at any given time. But as for the reason that we're having here today, the reason why we're here, the reason why this event is putting these proceeds is this stuff right here. We've already talked about the May v. Bonta lawsuit, which is currently at the Ninth Circuit, but this is our challenge to the SB2 sensitive places. They're trying to make it so that even if you have a CCW, you can't carry it anywhere in the state. And thank God that in our appeal, we at the federal district court level, we were able to get all of these sensitive places thrown out. Since it's gone to the Ninth Circuit, some other things have happened where some of them have been reinstituted. But for now, the vampire rule, which is that rule stating that if a place of business that is open to the public wants to allow people to carry firearms in their store, they physically have to have a sign basically saying firearms are welcome here. That's not right, which is why we continue to fight it. But fortunately in California, that is something that is not enforceable by law enforcement. But we've also got Richards v. Newsom. We've talked about this one a couple of times. This one, we got shot down at the federal district court. We're now trying to get it to the Ninth Circuit. But guys, this was, I think, Senate Bill 1327, or 1384, that is imposing a huge burden on gun stores, forcing them to have surveillance systems with install costs I've seen vary throughout the state from $5,000 to $50,000, requiring a certain quality of video and audio. And this isn't just for box stores. This is for home FFLs as well. This is a huge infringement on our rights that was specifically seemingly designed to get rid of stores, especially the home FFLs. We've also got Boland v. Bonta, which is our challenge to the handgun roster. If you've been following along with this one, you've got the magazine disconnect, you've got the chamber load indicator, and you've got the micro stamping that we challenged at the federal district court. And in the government that we won on, we got the government appealing to the Ninth Circuit. They didn't even bother to appeal the micro stamping requirements. So currently arguing that one at the Ninth Circuit on just the magazine disconnect, as well as the chamber load indicator, which removing that micro stamping requirement has allowed new firearms since last year to start coming on the roster. We do the pig raffle that you'll see at CRPA booths at events that now give away the Ruger Max 9. That's a new firearm. That firearm otherwise would not be able to be sold in California if it weren't for that lawsuit. We've also got the Junior Sports Magazine lawsuit, which again is at the Ninth Circuit. And this one has been a nightmare, but this is challenging the government's decision to try to take away our First Amendment rights, basically banning communication to minors about firearms. Now, we've had a tough time with this one at the federal district court level. Fortunately, there was another lawsuit that was basically arguing the same thing that we were in front of another judge that got the injunction on it, but now there is more definitions that are getting remade at the court level. So we're continuing to fight this one at the Ninth Circuit and trying to keep that injunction in place. Of course, you've got the Rhodey and the Duncan case. Duncan v. Bonta is our challenge to the magazine ban. This is the case that brought Freedom Week a few years ago, where over 1 million magazines were able to be imported into the state. We did end up getting a stay on that injunction, and then with Bruin having to go through the federal district and now the Ninth Circuit again, that one likely you will see being petitioned to the Supreme Court again. And then the Rhodey case, which is our challenge to the ammunition regulations that came in with Proposition 63. Guys, a victory in this lawsuit takes away that fee when you're going to purchase your ammunition every time you go. It takes away the requirement for background checks. It takes away the ban on being able to ship directly to your door, which again, recently when the case went back to the federal district court and we got the injunction from Judge Benitez, we saw a time frame similar to Freedom Week where we were able to import that ammunition and have it shipped. Again, a stay has been implemented. We actually have oral arguments coming up on that case in the Ninth Circuit. I believe they're on December 2nd. Jacob's going to have to do an inlay afterwards here if I didn't get that date right. But I'm pretty sure it's December 2nd here in Pasadena. So we're looking forward to that one. We've got B&L Productions v. Newsom, excuse me, which we are battling currently at the Ninth Circuit as well. This is challenging the laws from people like Senator Dave Min, who's in a fight for his life politically coming up here in about a week and a half, trying to get rid of firearms sales on state-owned property. Guys, a lot of these gun shows, especially in Southern California, happen at fairgrounds, which is state-owned property. They're trying to shut down the gun shows and by extension shut down the Second Amendment conversation by implementing laws like this, which currently are in effect. We do have a mandate stating that it's illegal to have firearms purchases, but we're going to continue fighting that one at the Ninth Circuit. And then finally, what we touched on with Reno May was the 11% tax that was implemented last year. We are continuing the fight on that. But guys, all of these lawsuits, and of course there are partners and there are amicus briefs that we have in these lawsuits, but these are just the CRPA lawsuits. There's definitely time, effort, and money that needs to go into this fight every single day to make sure and maintain these lawsuits so that we can look forward to a path where we are ensuring our Second Amendment rights and expanding the firearms community. So that's the reason why we're all here. That's the reason why events like this happen. And again, we are very appreciative here at CRPA for people like the staff here at Route 66 that have the understanding that is necessary. And I think that's really where the foundation is. They understand it's a necessity, so they create events like this and offer the proceeds to go into the fight. But I think that's going to do it for us today, guys. We're going to be live streaming again, same time, same place tomorrow. And again, we are here at the Route 66 Range Expo. If you haven't been to this range before and you're in the Southern California area, I would certainly suggest that you check it out. I think the event is open until 3 o'clock today. It's again open from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. tomorrow. It's a great opportunity to get some FaceTime with vendors, other people within the community. They've got guest speakers. And as for guest speakers, I think we're going to have Chad Bianco, who is the sheriff of Riverside County, on tomorrow, along with Costas Moros, who is one of the attorneys working on these Second Amendment cases. As always, guys, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this, to these videos and to this channel. We've got super chats open for these live streams. Excuse me. We'll also be live streaming for the election. We're going to be doing an election live stream on November 5th. We'll have super chats open there. If you've got questions, you want to make donations, put it straight directly into this fight. It's certainly appreciated. So until tomorrow, guys, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. Good. Yeah.